Hello, ladies and gentlemen, it's Mike here at Game From Scratch, and today is a big day for game developers because the wait is finally over. For those of us that have been waiting for Godot, wait no longer. Godot 4 just shipped today. And as you may be able to guess from the name Godot 4, this is a major release. The biggest release since, well, Godot 3. So there is a lot to cover in this release, and I'm going to start with the most logical thing, and that is eye candy. So what you see here, this is a demo level. I created this using Synty assets that are available in a current Synty Humble Bundle. It's nice because it kind of gives you an idea of the new rendering capabilities, and more important, the new asset importing capabilities. So for example, this uses the new FBX importer. Check this out. So we got here FBX files. This has been one of those things that previously was a little troublesome to work with. This guy, it literally loads up, boom, exactly as you want. In this case, you got to move the textures into the same folder as the FBX file, but other than that, you have to do no other work. It brings in this entire complex scene without issues, but there's more to it than that. You also have automatic LOD generation, and that is a really cool feature. So a way LODs work, basically, as you get closer to something, it'll use a higher detail version. When you get further away, it will use a low polygon version of it. This obviously gives you better performance on big scenes, and that is done automatically. That's not just for FBX, by the way. So any file, you bring in a GLB file or an OBJ file, you can also have automatic LOD generation. You don't need to do any work. It just handles it for you, and that is quite nice. But there's also a number of other graphical features that have been added in the engine itself. But we also have some performance level things that are very important to showcase. So for example, we now have occlusion culling. This is a way of basically telling the renderer what is currently visible. Now you can come through here and you can actually define the occluders yourself. So you could set up polygons, boxes, and spheres, basically say, this is what occludes or blocks that. But you don't actually have to go through all that detail, because once you've actually gone ahead and created it, you can just go ahead and bake one if you wish. So go ahead, we'll write over that guy that I'd already done. And this will automatically bake occlusion into your map. So you can see here, fine, go ahead, and done. There you see the polygon mesh right around. This is used in defining what obscures the other things behind. I don't know why we just jumped across the map, but occlusion culling is a way of basically speeding up the performance of the underlying render as well by letting it know what blocks something else from being able to see. So you can automatically bake out occlusion maps, which is very nice. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to showcase some graphic abilities from basically scratch. So let's start with the exact same scene. So we're going to create a new 3D scene, and we're going to create this war demo scene. We'll just drop it in like so. So I'm going to set up and showcase some of the really cool new rendering effects that we've got going on. Now there is one little kind of gotcha in this scene as far as YouTube goes. So I'm going to go ahead and open it up. The problem is it uses some, let's just call it problematic flags. So I'm just going to go ahead, and so that our viewers in Germany don't have this blocked, we will go ahead, oops, I got to expand that out, and we will switch to the less problematic versions of the flags. All right, there we go. So now we are good to go. So here is our map. Once again, like we looked at before, so now we're going to take a look at some of the new graphical capabilities of the Godot Engine 4. And what do those abilities include? Well, one of the biggest new ones is definitely the new global illumination system. So we've got a couple of different options here. Global illumination is kind of a way of representing how light works, and it's for doing indirect bounces. So when a light goes off a surface and appears on another surface, it is global illumination that is doing that. Well, when you've got a big level like this that is wide open and outside, global illumination it doesn't work ideally using traditional means. The nice thing here is we have a non-traditional way of handling it now, and that is something called, oops, so let's go ahead and save my scene. Save here. All right, let's go back to our default stock scene here. We'll call it new scene, like so. And that is using something called SDFGI. So this is Signed Distance Field Global Illumination. So we'll go back to right here, and now let's go ahead and create that. So to add that in, what you need to do is create a world environment. So most of the new graphic settings are actually here in world environment. And there we've created a new one. Let's set up our new environment like so. And we can come in and edit it. SDFGI is enabled with a simple checkbox. Now, this, I think, is a bit of a bug. I'm actually using RC6 while it initially calculates it, but if I just move slightly it goes away and calculates it, and now it is doing real-time global illumination using this new algorithm. So it's not really showing its capabilities quite yet because there's not really that many light sources going on here. So let's go ahead and we will add in a new light source capability showing you some of the new functionality that's here as well. So for example, we can do background mode. So instead of clear color, let's create a new sky. Well, we obviously don't have a sky yet, so let's create a new sky here, and we all now have the ability to create a new procedural sky like that, and then that will work with the SDFGI algorithm over here. By the way, I also like switching this guy over to a different tone mapping, just get slightly different results. So here you can see our sky. We've got control then over various different aspects of the sky itself. So let's open that guy back up. We're creating a procedural sky. We'll open that guy back up. So you got control over the sky. You can change obviously the sky color, so we can make it a little bit more blue. Obviously, you're seeing the effects of that on the world immediately. And then we go here. We can also change out the sun. So come here, sun. We can change the angle of the sun, and you're going to see the effects of that in real time as well. And that will obviously change the way the sun renders in the sky. So let's go ahead and show you the results there. And that is affecting all the underlying lighting solutions as well. So we got the new global illumination, so we can think of this sort of like Lumen real-time lighting in Unreal Engine if you're familiar with it. Nice big new feature there as well, but we've got other ones going on here as well. So we've got screen space indirect lighting, and this is for, watch what happens to the shadows here when I turn it on. So here, let's turn that one on. And you kind of just get darker, more, I don't know if the word is abrupt shadows. And by the way, you can really turn it up and down. So if you want to have more shadows, sharper shadows, you can use that one right there. Since it's screen space, it also shouldn't be too big of a pain in terms of your processing. We also have the powerful SSIL, which is screen space ambient occlusion. So this is how the light is going to affect in the scene. Let's go ahead. We'll turn that one on right there. Again, it's just a simple checkbox, and you can change the effect, so you can see the results of it going on right there. So you got really fine-tuned control over how the lighting and scenes and shadows work in your environment. Also, you've got these procedural skies. Obviously, we can change the strength of the sky, so we can have it light out, or we could just go to a dark environment right here. Obviously, we have this new global illumination system available right here. But sometimes you're going to find yourself in enclosed environments such as this one. This is another demo from that Humble Bundle for Synty assets, and it is, again, inside this time. And I'm going to show you another new global illumination system that was added, and this one is a Voxel base. So if you want to have, in this case, SDFGI is disabled here. I do have a light source in this scene, but we don't have a ton of ambient light like we did before. Again, more of an internalized environment, but it's also not massive. So we can do something that's a little bit more resource intensive, and that is we're going to use Voxel GI. So I'm just come in here, we'll do Voxel GI like so, and this will create a new node in our world. This guy right here, let's bring it over here so that it is in our rough area like this. Move it out a bit like that. And what we want is for this box to encompass that room, more or less. So let's just expand it out this. I think I need to move it a little bit to the right. Let's see. I want it to be sort of centered on this room. Okay, right there. And then we'll just do this so that it is above the ceiling like this. And we're just going to grab these major control points. Oops, that's way above the ceiling. Doesn't really matter. This one will go past the ends right there. So this envelops our space entirely. We can also go ahead and pick the resolution that we wish. So we're going to go ahead here and say 256. And then the final step there is to actually bake the data. So just come in here and say new Voxel GI data. And you'll notice there is this button up here for baking it. So let's see what the effect of the lighting is on the scene once we bake this guy right here. So this is a secondary global illumination system, better for internal sealed environments. And there you see you get just sharper, better textures. You get secondary light bounces and so on. And on the topic of light, we also have another very cool new feature. Now, I don't know why this one shows that I haven't got the data. I don't know if I have to actually save it to a file and bring it out, but I think that is actually a bug that's going around. But we go back here to the world environment. Another new cool thing here, we had fog before, but now we have volumetric fog. So we can turn it on like so. So if you want to have a foggy environment, you can create one like this. Obviously, we can change the intensity of our fog. So that is a very intense fog right there. So you can drag it down Now, that was not what I wanted, 0.1. So here is a very foggy environment. So I don't know what this actually scales off. So let's go 0.02, and we will trim our fog levels down. So you've got this new fog system that way. The other cool thing here is if you actually want to have specific fog for an effect, you can also come over here. We go new, and I can do a volume fog like so, and we can actually add fog volumes directly into the world. So see how this is when this is moving around? This is kind of like a chunk of fog in the world, and it interacts with the lights that are available in the scene. So we got this new volumetric fog, both kind of at a global level, and you can also just create these local fog volumes that you can obviously, as you see here, I can resize it, shape it as I wish, and it'll interact with the scene. So another neat new graphical capability of this new render. Now, it's not all on the 3D space, and I didn't cover every new feature by any means, so let's do a quick look at 2D. Now, 2D got some decent level of improvements as well. So we got new rendering options, the ability to clip through the child. We've got directional lighting here, better improved lighting and shadowing support in 2D. But probably the biggest new thing came in the form of the improved tile map stuff. So here I'm using the isometric example to demonstrate this. I'm going to go ahead and select the tile map, and here you're going to see the editor opens up. So you've got the ability, you can define clipping patterns here. You can create tile maps. It's got new tools for automatically creating the tile maps for you. We can create patterns of tiles. You can create terrains and so on. So really, like here, drawing the floor, I could pick a floor level tile right here, and we basically start painting and drawing our floor this way. We got a number of different drawing tools here, so I could draw in a line, I could flood fill, etc. We could also draw completely random tiles. We got control over various different tile layers going on here as well. So all new drawing tools here. We can also do things like come up here like with the floor, and I can go into, I think it would be select mode. I can grab a chunk of tile right here, and I can drag it down here, and then we can just use that as a pattern for filling in the rest of the world. Want to repeat with this? So if you created a house out of a compound of tiles, you could go ahead and create these patterns that you can draw with, which is basically a collection of tiles that work together. So yeah, that is probably the biggest new feature and functionality on the 2D graphic side of things, is the overhaul of the tile engine. That also includes the tools for actually creating and populating these tiles. Got a lot easier. You basically can just drag and drop them in. It's better at handling them. It's also better at stretching in between arbitrarily sized tiles. So a lot of improvements on the 2D tile mapping support. All right, so let's go ahead and jump in and take a look at the release notes, because there is all kinds of other features in Godot 4 to cover. So here we are in the release notes. There is an absolute ton in here. I'm not going to go into it in a ton of detail because I don't want this video to be 7 hours long. I'm going to start things off, obviously, with the new renderers. We talked about Vulkan already. There's the clustered mobile, the Forward Plus renderer as well. On top of that, we do have an OpenGL-based compatibility renderer. It's still, again, slightly under development at this point in time. There is a Direct3D 12 renderer out there as well. They also added support for AMD's Fidelity Effects, or FSR. Super resolution upscaling. 1.0 support is there now, but 2.1 is planned in a future release. Also got some improvements to obviously lighting and shadows. We talked about a number of these. SDFGI, or Signed Distance Field Global Illumination, which is ideal for outdoor environments. And we also have GI probes, new replacement, the Voxel GI, an ideal real-time solution for smaller, medium scale internal stuff. Gives you great results. And then you can also bake out light maps if you prefer as well. So if you do not want real-time global illumination, you can just cook out light maps for lower-end hardware. We've got improvements to the optimization techniques. As I mentioned earlier on, you have the occlusion culling that's there. That's also was backported to the earlier version 3.x. Automatic mesh LODs. And then we've also got things such as screen space, indirect lighting, and then more. On the 2D side of things, obviously we touched on it earlier on, the new level editing tools. So the new tile map editor includes layers, a new auto tiling system to paint large areas quickly, randomized painting system to scatter plants, rocks, and other props, selection tool to copy, stamp, save selections for later reuse. Tile texture sets are automatically expanded to prevent gaps from appearing between tiles, and a new scene placement feature allows you to add characters, chests, and other interactive scenes to grid cells. Very cool stuff there in terms of the functionality on Tilemap editing. 2D rendering got some improvements as well, such as new clip children property, as you can see it in action right here. Also, multi-sample anti-aliasing, or MSAA option, was added to the 2D engine for better image quality and smoother edges. By the way, you're going to want to probably turn that off if you're actually going for that chunky pixel look. Also, improvements to the 2D lighting and shadows, so directional lights and shadows there. Using sign distance filter shaders can you create advanced visual effects such as long drop shadows and so on. New atmospheric effects like the volumetric fog that we saw earlier on here. You also have the sky shader, which we also saw earlier on. Advancements to the shaders in general. The shader editor got some love and has some new functionality, a nicer look, and so on. The shader language was improved as well, so including support for uniform arrays, fragment to light varying, structs, preprocessor macros, and shader includes. Also, Godot now supports and uses compute shaders to accelerate algorithms using the graphics card, which is a nice change. On the topic of scripting, GDScript got a lot of love, so probably beyond what I can cover in this video. Maybe actually do my own video on it at some point in the future, but it's just kind of they did a lot of top to bottom changes on it. I don't know if they do a breakdown here. I have another article where they do cover the breakdowns available in GDScript 2. C# also got a lot of improvements, including a new variant type there, more consistent naming. It's now not using it's compiling as opposed to using reflection for creating its bindings. So a lot of improvements there. Also, the biggest thing is that on desktop platforms, it's actually using .NET 6 now instead of Mono, which should give you better performance, support for newer versions of C#, etc. There are some important things to be aware of when it comes to C#, though. C# version of the editor requires the .NET 6 SDK to be installed. Godot 4 does not support C# products imported from Godot 3, and currently mobile and web platforms are not available. They are still using Mono, which is a bit unfortunate. So some whip stuff still there. You're going to see some of these things showing up in Godot 4.1, which is like a stability and the things we missed kind of release. And a big thing here is GD extensions. GD extensions have replaced GD native. I already showcased it with some examples, such as the Rust language bindings. We did it in the past. It's going to give you a lot easier process for extending Godot and better capabilities in terms of what you can. Now, in terms of a feature that is a step forward and a step back, is physics. My understanding from some people I've heard is physics are quite broken in Godot 4 right now. They stopped using the bullet engine and they've moved back to using their own in-house physics system, and they're trying to bring it on par with bullet in terms of features that are available. So they're using that. It's got a better API, better stability of the simulation and so on, but also it's an area of pain. So if you bring your project over to Godot 4, I would expect physics is probably going to be the area where you have the most struggle. And if you liked using bullet physics before, well, obviously that is an issue. Another neat thing here, and there's been more and more tools that have been created using the Godot game engine, or if you're creating your own level editors, etc., you may like this one. You now have support for multiple windows. So you can see here 2 windows running within the same application. Really kind of opens up a world of opportunities in terms of what you can actually do with it. We also got improvements to the UI editor itself. Theming support changed there, so a new widget for picking layout options, inspector filters properties that are relevant to your specific selection. There's a new text rendering system, which also will handle the right to left languages, such as Arabic and East Asian languages better. The new internationalization tools in here as well. On top of that, we've got new theme and theme editing functionality in there. Again, I kind of mentioned on this earlier on, there's better internationalization support, extended language support, easier translation workflow is built in there as well, improvements to the UX in general. Again, I touched on this earlier on, easier and better importing, including that automatic generation of LODs, which is very, very nice. Although it's not showing up on this one that I can see. On top of that, again, obviously we have the ability to bring in the FBX using the new FBX importer, and this is another neat one. You can actually bring in GLTF files at runtime. So if you're making your tooling in this and you needed tooling to bring into file import, or if you want to have dynamic content, user-created content, particularly for your game, you can now import your 3D files at runtime, which is kind of cool. Improvements to the editor and widgets in general. Godot. So just kind of across the board, you're going to find it a little bit everywhere in your workflow. Improvements to the dock. Script editor got improvements as well. Easier version control. There's now a new movie maker mode in there as well. So if you're recording gameplay, it's built directly in. AI got improvements there as well. So server-based navigation system. This was backported to 3.5 as well, but if you need to have pathfinding around your control and complex control and things like navigation links to do things like jumping, teleporting, and so on, just better tools across the board for pathfinding for artificial intelligence in there. The world of VR/AR, now encompassed as XR, got improvements there as well, including wireless support for a variety of headsets and improved tools there. Got improvements on the networking and multiplayer side of things. Audio also got a major update as well, so cleaner sound, built-in polyphony support, music looping and music looping point and text-to-speech are in there. There's also, I think it was actually the real-time audio system was basically rewritten. Improvements to animation, including an enhanced animation editor, improved 3D animation workflow, animation libraries and retargeting, blending, and complex animation support, a new tweening system. So there's a ton of functionality there as well. We've got Android and web support. Kind of interesting. You can actually get Godot 4 on the Google Play Store now. So if you're using a Chromebook or a high-end phone, you can actually start developing games on those platforms. You've got more exporting options as well. A variety of different platforms such as Raspberry Pi, Microsoft Volterra, which I'm not even sure what that is, and so on. Also, HTML5 export was improved as well. And then we're also going to see a number of things ultimately being bumped up in 4.1. We're also seeing 3.6 release will come out at the older branch as well, and then that will go basically to just long-term support versions on the old version, and then we're going to see in 4.1 a bunch of love in that regard as well. So that is it for the release notes on Godot 4. Again, I skimmed over that because there is an absolute ton of things, but my skimming still took 9 minutes. So as you can see, there is a lot in Godot 4. If you're interested in drilling down, there's a bunch of articles out there. For example, if you're using C#, there are a ton of changes to C# specifically. I really only kind of mentioned the variant type, but on top of that, again, .NET 6 support is in there, better documentation, NuGet support. We got collection signals as events, callable support, and so on. I will link all of these articles with the linked article down below as well. So if you want to get into more details, there is a breakdown article for C#. There is one specifically for the new multiplayer support in Godot 4. There is one on the XR update specifically. So if you want to get into more details of the new functionality for XR VR, it is available there as well. We have some updates on the status of the OpenGL 3 renderer. So this is the legacy renderer. Originally, Godot 4 was going to be Vulkan only, but Vulkan isn't as universally supported as we'd like. And so this is an update on where they're at there. So obviously there are some things that are currently missing that they will be adding in. So hopefully this is a 4.1 thing. But if you're interested in the state of the legacy renderer, that document is available there as well. More details on the movie maker mode that arrived in Godot 4.0 are available here as well. So if you want to record your own game trailers, this is built directly inside of the Godot engine. And in terms of GDScript 4, this isn't from the Godot engine, but kind of a breakdown of the best new features of GDScript 2. Things like first-class functions, lambdas, new property syntax, the await keyboard, super keyboard, typed arrays, built-in annotations, and automatically generated document. I will link this as well. So if you want to get like a hands-on example of the tweaks and changes that were actually made to GDScript, you can get into them right here. But basically, GDScript was just made more modern, more capable, just better to work with in general. So a lot of updates to GDScript 2, and this article summarizes it pretty well. So ladies and gentlemen, that is the extent of Godot 4.0 release. I started, again, heavily on the graphics side because obviously the new Vulkan renderer and all the functionality that came with it are a big part of Godot 4.0, but pretty much with the possible exception of physics and across-the-board update, I think for many of you, you're still going to be waiting for Godot. You're going to be waiting for Godot 4.1 because that is kind of like what happened with Godot 3. Godot 3 was brand new and awesome and gave you a chance to check things out, but 3.1 was the first really usable version. You may find a similar path with Godot 4, that a lot of the functionality that you really are excited by is just going to be more generally usable when 4.1 ships. But let me know what you think of Godot 4, of what is in here. What's your favorite new feature? Are you excited? Are you now waiting for Godot 5? Let me know. I will talk to you all later. Goodbye.